Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name is Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk, and UK Astrologer. And today we have a special guest. We've got Saffron Dennis, who is coming to talk with us today. And she's a professional astrologer. She lives in East Anglia in the UK. And she started her astrological journey by studying with a guy called Chris Brennan, who we've talked about before. He does the astrology podcast. She also studied with Elenbaas at Nightlight Astrology, and she studied with Sue Ward. She's got some qualifications in crystals, and she's revisiting a crystal course with the Bristol Academy of Crystal Healing. And she's also a member of the Spiritual Companions Trust. And so she's a spiritual coach, companion, and caregiver. And she volunteers for Action for Happiness, and she's also a trustee for the Astrological Association. So welcome, Saffron. Lovely to meet you.
It sounds like I'm very busy, doesn't it?
Well, you are busy having all that studying. So take me back to when you first ever heard about astrology. Was it an astrologer you saw, something on the telly, something you read? Your first ever experience of astrology. Can you remember what that was?
I can, and this is one that I do tell everybody. My childhood, we won't go too much into that, but there's certain things that you can always remember, that you will thank your parents for. My stepfather taught me from you. Do you remember those great big Reader's Digest atlases? They were huge, like they were A1 size. Do you remember
Mm.
those? Well, we had one of those, and he was going through the maps because I used to love maps, and then we opened it to the map of the world of the stars and the constellations, and he was like, "This is you, and this is your mum, and this is me," and that was when I was like, "Oh, what does that mean? I'm a Leo because I'm a Leo sun." And he's like, "Yeah, that's the constellation." And we went outside and we looked at the stars, and so that was the first thing that I remember. And I would have been eight, nine, probably 8 or 9, something like that. So that was the first thing that I really remember as like I have a star sign.
Hmm.
That is something everybody has one. And from that point onwards, we were a family that on one hand was very liberal, on one hand wasn't, but that sort of thing was very open. Um, I was I had a family friend who bought me a pack of tarot cards when I was 12 for my 12th birthday. We were that sort of family. So yeah, that would have been my first experience of astrology, but obviously it was all sun sign stuff. So yeah.
And then when did you find out that there was such a thing as a birth chart? When did that crack in?
I would have been in mid-teens then. That would have been, quite a bit later. I remember my friend having a book, and I mentioned this to her a few weeks ago. She had a book that showed you where your moon, that you had a moon sign and that
Hmm.
you had a rising sign. And those things were like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was a thing. So that would have been that. But I didn't get my first reading until I would have been in my 20s. And
Yeah,
that
but
was
did
one.
you know what a birth chart was? So did that book that your friend have, did it sort of draw charts as a circle, or did it just sort of list that you've got ascendant and oh, okay, right, okay. So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
did the book determine what your ascendant was? Did it talk about times of birth times or anything or not?
No, no, no.
All right.
It was a very, very basic. And I can still see the picture. When something ingrains in your brain. There were cartoon pictures of. I remember it showing a woman with little dogs saying a Leo will love cats, but when they get older, it's just one of these random things. You'll want little dogs. Right? How weird is that? And it's just one of those things that I remember sticking in my brain, but it was very much a coffee table, very, very basic. I got Parker's. Parker's was my first one that I got with a birth chart. So like a lot of people did, that's one of the first ones everyone gets hold of, isn't it? So I
Did you
had
get it
that.
from a library or a bookshop? Where did you get that book from?
Oh, I bought that. I would have bought that in the local bookshop in Bedford.
Do they sell astrology books in your local bookshop in Bedford?
Only the Parker, yeah, it would have only been Parker's, because it was a little one, and then later on I got the big version.
Mm.
So it was a little how to, and I think, Yeah, there would have been two or three. You know what it's like in bookshops. You get two or three astrology books
Mm.
and yeah, pretty much coffee table version, the Linda Goodman sun signs and all that sort of stuff. I would always go to and I still do, I'm sure we all do, we go to a bookshop and the first place you go is to the esoteric section and see whether there's anything new coming out. But obviously that's getting smaller and smaller as we go along. Um, we had a old bookshop in Bedford back in the day, but that's gone now, and I don't really go into Bedford. I'm very lucky. I live not far from Cambridge, so we do get to have a little rumble round there. And there's also a fabulous bookshop in Letchworth that do secondhand books. So I'm a bit of I like to read.
Mhm.
So books are my thing. Yeah.
Cool. And the thing about when you read a book, did it make any sense? Were these books understandable?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think because that sort of talk was around me, nothing, you know how a lot of folk will come to it later on or in a place where astrology or esoteric subjects, whatever they may be, are really taboo.
Mm.
That was, I never had to sort of come out of my shell in any way and say, oh, I'm into this sort of thing because it was just normal to me. So I would talk about it and people would sometimes look at me and go a little bit, oh,
Hmm.
it didn't there was I never felt like it was something that I couldn't talk about. I think we're very fortunate in the UK that see we don't have some of the restrictions that some other cultures have. And even back then, people might have thought I was a little bit kooky, but to be honest, I had a lot worse things said about me. So that was one of the lesser things to worry about. So yeah.
And so when did you find out about the other planets like Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc.?
That would have all been in the Parker's book. So going through that, and then I remember reading about progressed charts and thinking,
Eee!
oh, wow, look at this, so that starts to get your brain moving because in the Parker's book, it does actually tell you, if I remember correctly, it's been ages since I've looked through, but it does tell you what happens when, your son progresses into the next house and you're like, I'm going to change.
Oh yes, welcome.
Yeah, so that was my first foray. And to be honest, they were the books that I taught myself the basics. So they were my like self-help teaching because, obviously there wasn't the internet. I am old enough to have started all of this before 73.
Well, you're not as old as me, but the internet didn't kick off until the 90s, so you would have been in your 20s then. Early 90s, if I remember rightly. I mean, because I mean, the internet happened, but not everybody had it in their houses. It's like I remember, now you're not old enough for this, but I remember when televisions were invented. So not everybody had those in their houses either, and you had to rent them. You couldn't buy them. You rented your TV from radio rentals. They were too expensive to buy. But yes, the internet. I think because I'm going to be having a discussion with Victor in January about sun sign astrology, and some people can be rather sort of look down on it. Oh, it's very basic and stuff. But actually, I think it's the doorway into astrology. Knowing it's very rare for me to come across someone who doesn't know what sign of the zodiac. They might not know anything about astrology, but they're, oh, I'm a this, I'm a that, or the other. And then there are the ones that are born towards the beginning or the end of the sign, go, well, I don't really feel like a Gemini. I don't sort of feel like whatever it is. And then they go, I'm born on the cusp. And then we have a big argument because I was telling there's no such thing as a cusp. You're either one sign or you're the next sign, or you might have planets in the other one. But I've got a whole thing about there is no such thing as a cusp. But it's interesting, everybody's journey into astrology is not the same. I always ask people how they do it. 9 times out of 10, there is some sort of book involved or some relative somewhere that points something out. Now, my parents were Catholic, so there's no way they're going to be stood in the garden looking up at the stars. They weren't even interested in astronomy either. That wasn't something that either my parents were into. So I didn't really get to know about anything until I was a teenager. And then it was Linda Goodman. But I was lucky I had an auntie that was into astrology. So did you have any relatives that were into astrology?
Not my stepfather's youngest sister was very much into all sorts of things esoteric, but I don't really remember us having those discussions. No one. taught me, if you know what I mean. That was all
Mm,
very much me going and finding books to read about it and doing my own stuff with that. The tarot more, as I say, my family friend, she actually taught me the tarot, and that's when I got into that. So esoteric studies of all sorts. I mean, I've had people buy me the runes. That's never really interested me that much. You get certain things will stick.
mm,
And yeah, they were the two things that stuck. But astrology's always been the thing for me that I go back to, even if I've left it for a certain amount of time,
mhm.
because I do have this tendency to move from one thing to another.
Well, you have got a mutable ascendant, so that's not unheard of. Hmm.
Yeah, so but I always come back to astrology, always do. So this last time it's got fixed in and here I am now. So
And in whole sign, is your sun in the eighth or the
ninth
ninth? Okay, yes, in equal house, it's in the eighth, but whatever. And where's your moon in whole sign?
in the 10th.
10th, right. Okay. And then, so, okay, so there's the question. So when you first started learning astrology, did you know much about house systems?
Well, like everybody back then, it was Placidus because, you know, you were either Placidus or equal. I think they were probably the only two that anybody ever really used, weren't they?
Mm.
Horary really wasn't a thing back then, was it? Not really. It was sort of underground with you know, obviously Sue and John and Olivia Barclay and all those, but I mean, it wasn't out there like for us. So but yeah, I was Placidus, but I think that to be honest, and I know this is going to sound like me harking on about whole sign all the time, but for me, working in Placidus always felt like there was something not quite right, and maybe it just is because in Placidus, my sun, because I have a Sun Jupiter opposition exactly.
Yes, you do. Hmm.
And in Placidus, they are right on exactly the cusp of the eighth and second house. And so nothing, I'm like, well, what am I? What does this mean? This is too ambiguous. There's nothing defining here. And I used
Oh,
to
that sounds
find,
like your moon in Virgo.
yeah,
Oh, that's a little too vague for me. Yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, and it just felt very, very odd. And I had my first reading that I had. Um, she recorded it, and you know, back in the days, you didn't do any of this. I had a tape or a CD. I think it was a CD. She sent me a CD,
Hmm.
and I remember listening back to it and thinking, this makes no sense. None of this makes any sense at all. And I got a little bit disheartened with that one, but then went and had a reading with someone else. And don't ask me who that was because I cannot remember now for the life of me. Um, and that was better, but I think probably just because we were having a bit of a discourse. You know, you talking to someone, you get a little bit of a feel for something. But yeah, that first one back then, and that was quite a bit of money for me. I was a single mum at the time. And that was a pricey experience that wasn't particularly great. So I was a little bit about that one.
How much
Um,
did it cost you? Can you remember? Was it more than 100?
I think it was about £100. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So
lot of money when you're a single mother. I had to pay over £100 for psychic reading with somebody once, and it was really important questions I wanted to ask. And this woman apparently was like the top in the online. This is not online, telephone psychic readings. And eventually, I went and worked for a similar company myself. But I paid all this money to have this reading with this woman. It was over 100 quid, and I was desperate. And she said I would move to somewhere with a yellow front door. I paid £100 to find out what colour the front door would be. Nothing else was true in that reading other than, and anyway, I'd already seen the house and I knew it was a yellow front door. So it was just that, oh, that was such a lot of money. But when you're in a bad place, you know, sometimes you can put the money to one side. But I didn't think it was particularly good value for money. £100, yellow front door. Okay, nothing else she told me was true.
well, she went wrong about the yellow front door. At least she got one thing right,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah, it was better than nothing, but I really felt quite short. And there was no way of getting a refund or anything. I just sort of put it down to experience. But when I started doing psychic readings over the phone, I was very careful not to make any comments that would be that specific that could then be sort of like held against me type of thing. Not that I talked about too many things that were too vague, but I'd want them to know the answer to what the question was. So they'd give me the question, what's going to happen about this, that, and the other. But I'd tell them it's going to be this or it's going to be that, because otherwise their money's being totally wasted. Okay, so you see, I'd never had any astrology readings. The first person who read for me was Chris Mitchell.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you had a great start there then.
Oh, yes. And he turned up to the house and because I think I'd only spoken to him on oh, this is before the internet, so I only spoke on the telephone. And he came to the house, and before he came, he said something, or maybe there was an email, beg your pardon. He said something that we were astrological twins. I thought, whatever's that mean? And it's because he's a Pisces, same. He's been born the same year, and he's also got a Leo ascendant, but he's a few days either before or after me. But he brought all these charts around and stuff, and I didn't understand a thing. I'd never even seen a birth chart before. I mean, he was talking English, but the charts, I was looking at them, what the hell are they? But and he said, we got the same ascendant, the same moon. It was ages later that I realised, understood, having learnt enough astrology, what it was that he meant. Because I do think sometimes people can go for a reading and not realise what they're stepping into. If they've got no idea about charts or planets or signs, it can be terribly overwhelming for people. Whilst with tarot cards, which you're doing, and I've done them in the past, but I do playing cards now, they can see the card, they can see the picture on the card. So when you're talking about it, it makes a lot more sense. But looking at a chart and it's a circle and there's these funny squiggly things, for a long time I thought astrology was bollocks, excuse my French, because it just looked, how does this thing on this computer screen relate to me here? But when you learn it, you realise why. So when did you get your aha moment? Did you get your aha moment when you started doing whole sign with Adam? Is that when it all started to make sense for you?
Yeah, it was
Oh no, you were doing that with Chris Brennan, beg
with
your pardon.
yeah, it was the this is funny. This is just typical of the way I work. Funny little story. I remember a friend of mine saying, "You need to watch this podcast. It's about astrology. Everyone's watching it." So I was watching Chris Brennan's podcast, and I had a bit of a existential crisis, shall we say, about moving from plasters to whole sign, and I was getting really going about it. And my husband he was laughing away in the background. What are you laughing at? He goes, "No, nothing, nothing, nothing." And then I went away as I do, and I drew up my chart and started reading into it, and then thought, right, I need to study this, and spent a bit of time looking into it. And I thought, actually, this now is covering the reasons why plasters wasn't sitting for me.
Mhm.
And I started to work out what was going on. I thought, I need to know, I now need to know for definite what this whole Hellenistic thing is. And
Mm.
I liked the fact that it went back to all of these documents that were being brought up by all these people translating all this information, the Roberts and Dimitri George and all of the work that was being done there. And obviously Chris Brennan had the other part of this was I had back in the noughties, I'd done 3 modules with one of the big schools over here in the UK. And back when you had to email because there was no other ways of doing it. But it was so prohibitively expensive for me. It was just really too much. And so I got the basics from that, which was really helpful, and it gave me a good way of structuring my learning. And I then took that on and did a lot of self-study that way. But I couldn't I just didn't have the money to go and spend to travel down to London and do all the things that needed to be done. So um, when I looked at what Chris was offering, he was offering his course, and I was looking at it thinking, well, this is a price point that I can afford. And what the information that he's giving out is making sense. So it's a self-study course. I mean, he gives you all the lectures,
Mm.
lots and lots of work. And I sucked it all in like a sponge and loved every minute of it. And I joined a study group and got talking with people, met so many different people through this group. Some of whom, obviously, our dear Jolly Knot, who she was one of the first people that I met that I became friends with, and obviously we're very, very good friends now. So I'm very grateful to the whole community of what was started in that group. Um, and my husband said to me about a year later, he said, I knew it. I just knew that you would get this absorbed into it because of your reaction, your negative reaction to it in the beginning.
Mm.
Because if you have such a passionate reaction to something, and I would say this about anything, any
Mm,
subject, anything, why are you getting that feeling? What is
mm,
it about that subject, person, discussion, whatever it may be, that's causing you to have such a reaction to it? Because it's probably there's something inside of you saying, I need to know more. I need to know more. I need to understand it. I want to understand it. Don't push it away.
mm.
Don't poo-poo it. Look into it. Find out what this means. What's the truth behind it? Your truth, whoever's truth, whatever. But don't say no to something until you know what you're saying no to,
Yes.
you
Mm,
know. So I went away and I studied it. And then, of course, I took, finished Chris's course, then went on and started working, started Adam's class because I thought, well, I need to go over this with somebody now in a classroom setting with other people. I wanted
hmm
to, get that. There was in our group, in our study group that I was in, for Chris Brennan's course, there was a lady called Michelle Courvoisier. She's amazing. Look her up on the internet, folks. She's out there. She's in Belgium. And I was just blown away with the amount of knowledge that she had. And I was like, where did you learn this? And she said, well, I work for Adam. So I was like, right, well, I need to take this class because I want to be like you. And so yeah, she's awesome and she's doing a lot of really, really good work. So
mm.
yeah, and that's why I ended up taking the course at Nightlight. And the rest is, you could say is history really, because I'm still there. Still there. So, yeah.
And so now you're doing whole sign and it's all making sense for you and stuff. And then can you remember your first reading you gave for someone? So not another student, but like a real live living human being that you gave a reading to. So you did a reading for them with whole sign. How was that
In
for you? How scary was it?
in whole sign, I'm trying to remember when that would have been. I mean, I've done readings for people, in Placidus for years. But yeah, going to whole sign, that probably would have been about 3, 4 years ago, but I can't remember the exact person.
Do you
It
make your
probably
charts on
actually,
astro.com? Where do you make your charts and send? Do you send them to the client beforehand? How does it work?
yeah, I've got solar fire.
I've got solar right.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I actually use for my client because solar fire is really glitchy for me. But anyway, we'll leave that there. I use Astro Theros, which is a new program. Came out a couple of years ago by an, as, an astrologer that worked. Oh gosh, let me get my words out. He was a student at Nightlight called
hmm
Bradley, who has set up this, and I just like it. I like the aesthetic of it. So that's what I do. But yes, now I'm thinking about it. The person that I did the first reading for in Wholesign was somebody that I'd read for in Placidus, and that's why I did it because I wanted to go and speak to a client that I'd had previously,
Mm,
and show that. I mean, to be fair though, she did say. I think the last reading I'd given to her was probably 10 years before. So it was a big, there was a big gap
mm.
between it. And she just said, all I remember you telling me is that you said I'm a Virgo rising and that I want to be perfect. And she said, that's all I remember you saying to me.
Well, is that not true?
But then, yeah, reading for her in whole sign was a very different, yeah. And just because we also look at the chart from whole sign is different to the psychological way people would look at a chart. So we're looking at the first house as the client, and then we're looking at the rest of the chart as the experiences for the client, and that's very basic of how I would say I look at it, which is very different to if you were having a reading from someone who'd been through the CPA, for example, where you're looking at the chart as you. So having a different perspective on, I'm very pleased that I've done and been able to look through both. I've
Mm,
read pretty much most of what Liz Green read, as we all did back in the day. So I've got all of the books that go with that sort of training, and
mhm.
the school that I was, they gave us a great big list of books that we needed to read back in the day. So yeah, but it was now I just feel it feels more authentic reading that way for me.
Mm.
Well,
And
we're all, we're all different. We all have different aspirations, different ways of doing things, different things we're looking for. Clients are all different. Not everybody wants to, speak about just themselves and their childhood or, traumas or anything. A lot of people are looking for, different things. And I think there's enough clients out there for every professional astrologer,
oh,
that will
sure,
be
there's no sort of
aligned
shortage
to
of
you.
clients. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. You just got to find the ones that are aligned to you.
And I think after a while, you tend to attract the ones that do align with you, if you know what I mean. But that's the law of attraction. But you're very interested in spiritual astrology. So, as a whole sign astrologer and spirituality, are you looking at things like ninth house? What would be the difference to like psychological Liz Green style to whole sign spiritual? Tell me how it is different or how it is for you.
I wouldn't look at it as just one house. The
Right.
whole chart is connected in ways that we can find spiritual in anything we do, because really the whole idea is I'll talk a little bit about the Spiritual Companions Trust.
Mm,
The first thing that we look at is say that there's wonder in everything and that there's no need to be connected to a religious doctrine to be able to find something that brings you a sense of wonder and connection to something that is other than us.
hmm
And that's how I like to look at the astrology. It's why the two meld it so well together. So if you're having, I mean, say for example, sad story, but yesterday I had to have my bunny put down, and I love my bunnies, sort of, yes. And obviously yesterday I was a little bit upset. But when you look at these experiences and look at the fact that, well, we're going through all these squares to Saturn, and it's Venus is rules my sixth house, which is small animals, and it's there's all of these things that you can look at and say, well, astrology is showing you in some way how that's going to play out for you. And
hmm
yes, you could end up being really down, get yourself really despondent, and, say, woe is me. I mean, I've had a whole year of, could give you a catalogue of things this year that have happened. Um, but what good does that do me to sit in that gloom? But the other thing that astrology also helps us do is see that these things are moving, they're moving. It's a
Mm,
constant moving mandala of life that is, and we're part of that as in the web, if you like, trying to get ourselves through it. And so there's a spiritual connection to all of that that's happening. I even though I'm sad that my bunny is not here anymore, I do feel that whatever he's doing now, he's probably a lot happier because he was in a lot of pain. So he's not in that pain anymore. And even if that's the only thing that has changed for him, he's not in pain. And how is that not a good thing?
mm,
So that's how I try and connect it. It's not just, oh yeah, my son's in the night, even though my son is in the ninth,
mm,
but that's not the only way of finding a connection to your own spiritual life. We've all got a way of connecting. It's just trying to find that. If a client comes to me and says, how can I be more spiritual? And I've got nothing in the ninth house, it's,
mm,
well, first thing you'd do, you'd look at the ninth house ruler. What's that doing? Where's it, has it got any aspects to anything else? Does it see the ascendant? Look at all those things. But even if it doesn't do that, it doesn't mean that there's no connection to the divine,
mm,
because you'd be connecting in a way. If anybody's coming to an astrology reading, I can't believe that there's anybody out there that's just coming and expecting there to be nothing. You've got to have, I mean, obviously, there are going to be people out there that test, and I'm sure you've had this. I've had come to a tarot reading, astrological reading where they're testing you, but still, there's still a wonder. There's still that sense of what is it that is bringing me to you. I don't know what it is. There's this strange pull for me to find out more. And it's that seeking that I think anybody that's does what we do is on that path, looking for something that's bigger than us, bigger than what we are here to, in this space. Um, that's how I try and, speak to clients about. everything, astrology, crystals, whatever it may be. There's a number of different things. I haven't done a tarot reading for years. I used to do the whole going around the spiritual fairs and all of that, but I just, for some reason, once I started really getting back into astrology, I left the tarot behind. I just use it for me. So, yeah, different tools for different things, like you say.
Yes, and I mean, I still use cards, but I don't use tarot, playing cards, rune cards, which you don't like, rune cards, karma cards, and the Celtic deck. And I use those in a psychic reading, but I never pretend that astrology and cards are linked. The cards I use aren't. Okay, they're not astrological cards other than the karma cards because they do mention things like, sun, second house, and then what have I got signs, houses, and planets is in that deck, but that you don't need to be interested in astrology to be able to get the answers to them. But I think in the UK we don't have quite a lot of people are non-religious. So they'll believe in something, and they don't go to church, but they know that there's something. And so it's funny when I'm working with people, sometimes they don't even want to go there. And then after a while, when they realise I'm not going to take the piss out of them if they say something about what it is that they believe in, then they're more happy to share that. So even people that are on appearance, coming in suits and stuff, go, oh, and then a little while later you'll find out, well, when my granny died, I saw her at the end of the bed, or, these sorts of things. So people do have spiritual experiences, but where do you pigeonhole it? Where do you classify that? What do you do with it? But I think everybody has a sixth sense as well. But astrology is not that, because I don't think you need to be psychic to be an astrologer. In fact, I think it doesn't help to be psychic to be an astrologer because you've got to stick to facts and etc. But the spiritual side of things is especially the 90s born generation, especially the indigos, their spiritual purpose and their life purpose, they're never ending questions that I'm asked. Why am I here? What's it all about? What can I do? So are you looking at north nodes and things? So are you doing Arabic parts as well?
Lots, as we call them in
Lots, yeah.
Hellenistic.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yes, I do use the lots. I did a talk very recently on Mars and the lot of courage, but I don't, to be fair, using them in a reading, unless I've seen someone on a number of occasions and it comes up, I don't just plop them in because, to be honest, there's not really any need. The most of the time a client will come to you and you will see in their chart before they even step through the door what they're going to be talking about, even if they think they're going to be talking about something else. You're looking at it going, no, we're
Mm-mm.
not talking about that, because very quickly it will come apparent that that's not really what's on your mind. But so yes is the answer. I look at that. I am very interested in the bounds. I like the fact that we can see in each house that there's this subdivision called the bounds.
Oh, tell
So
me, I don't know what bounds are. Word I haven't heard before. Explain, explain, explain.
okay, so each in Hellenistic astrology, there's a subdivision. So there's subdivisions on subdivisions, and just think about it like
I've heard of decans.
yeah, well, decans, that's a separate thing. So
Oh
that's
God, right. Sorry.
decans goes way, way back, excuse me.
Yeah. Bounds. Oh, we're gonna have to
Um,
look up bounds. Yeah.
yeah, so look up bounds. And so the decans go back and they're like a subdivision of 10,
Yes.
whereas the bounds are a subdivision of in unequal amounts. And they're the five planets without the luminaries. And so you can look at a space. You can pop this into astro.com, do it. They're all there. And what you get within that is like, let's just say this is how I always explain it to a
Mhm.
to a client. So you walk into a house and the house has got rooms. So you walk into, say, Pisces, it's Jupiter's house.
Mhm.
So Jupiter owns the house, it's his domain. But if you go into the bedroom, then that would be like a Venus room, say, for example, or the kitchen would be, the dining area that was all beautifully set out with a meal, or, however you want to look at it. And so each room is going to have different functions, and different planets are going to have more of a feel for that space. So you will have a Mercury ruled bound within a Jupiter sign house, shall we say. So say Pisces, yeah?
Hmm.
You've then got a
Oh, you can,
Mercury
okay. You've got a ruler to Pisces is Jupiter, yes?
Jupiter, yeah, and then
Hmm.
you've got a Mercury room, you've got a Venus room, you've got a Mars room, you've got a Saturn room, and so each of the planets that are not the luminaries, and I have a theory on that, but I won't go into that today
Oh,
because
I
it'll be
think
a
Chris
long
was
way.
talking about that. So in the houses, you're going to be going Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, whatever, in each house, yes?
In
Those
in
planets?
each in
Sorry, in
yeah,
each sign. Is
in
that
each
right?
sign.
So in the
Yeah,
30 degrees is going to be
yeah,
divided up because he was doing it, it was Saturn. So he was doing the other way round because he was going back to front. So he was going Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury. That was it. I don't think
yeah.
he did the moon one,
They're
sorry.
not always in the same. This is the thing, they're not always in the same
Same
order. So
order. Yeah.
yeah. So let's just look at Pisces. I've got it in front of me now because I can't
Yep.
remember. So the first few degrees are Venus. And then they're Jupiter, and then they're Mercury, and then they're Mars, and then they're Saturn. And it always ends up the very end of each of the signs end up with what we class of quote unquote a malefic that's in charge. And I don't want to go into that because I know that lots of people talk about, malefics and benefics, just say Saturn and Mars are classed as less helpful to us as humans in our human form.
Hmm.
Yet they do obviously have good things that they can show us too, but we'll leave that there.
Hmm.
So you that's how I would just think about a house with rooms, and
Hmm.
each room has a different function, and
Hmm.
each planet gives that room that function. So if you had a study, then you would be looking at maybe a Mercury, you'd be looking at a Mercury thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that would be if you had then a planet that was in the sign of Pisces, but in Mercury's room, shall
Hmm.
we say, bound,
Yep.
then Mercury, even though it's debilitated in that sign, is going to have a lot better is able to function more like Mercury in
Right.
Mercury's room.
Hmm.
And so that's how we would look at that from a Hellenistic perspective, because everything's got the ability to do something in those spaces. It's just finding what it is that it can do.
Hmm.
So how would you want to communicate with Mercury in Pisces? Well, you would find something maybe in the library of Pisces that would please Mercury enough that it would keep it, functioning in a way. And you think, well, poets and, people who are into maybe, I don't know, marine biology, I don't know. Yeah,
Hmm.
just finding something that's going to connect in. I mean, I've got a friend who's got Mercury in Pisces, and she's a member of Mensa,
Hmm.
so it doesn't stop you being mentally agile when you've got a planet that's not
I've got
what it
Mercury retrograde,
signifies.
for God's sakes, in Pisces. I shouldn't be able to even talk to you or be able to formulate one word over the next, according to certain types of astrology. Like it's debilitated and it's bloody retrograde. Bleh, but yeah. Um, Yes, because no, he didn't do deckhands. He didn't call them bands. I think he called them something else. But yes, I do know that he was dividing up because he was doing about somebody coming for a consultation. How will you know that when they say they want to talk about their father's health, what you'll actually find out is they want to know if they're going to get the inheritance, the dad's going to die. How would you determine that from the chart? It was a very, very interesting talk. But he did do all that sort of divisions of the things with the planets. He did it with some other methods, but I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it was bands. I'll go back to that because these older techniques they had to use then. They didn't have bloody computers. You think, cracky, how did they do all of those calculations then? They must have been pretty good at maths, which is why I never could have been an astrologer in the Hellenistic world. One, two, three. Couldn't have done it. And do those things from that way back. Now I'm going to ask you the question. Do those things from back then, do they convert to today?
Yes, that's a definitive answer, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Otherwise, well, as far as I'm concerned, yes, they work.
Mm.
Um, there's other subdivisions. I did a talk a couple of years ago on the 12 parts, which is another division. So basically, you have it's called the mic. I termed it the talk, the micro zodiac. So basically, there's the whole zodiac within your um, 30 degrees.
Hmm.
So you can look at that one. There's the ninth parts. I mean, you can look at each individual degree if you like, and people will use that. That goes a little bit too far for me, but I
Hmm.
mean, just for example, I try and explain this in if you look at Scorpio and you look at somebody who's got Scorpio and night chart, because then we go to
Yes.
set.
Yep.
And if you put Mars in Scorpio at the first degree, then it would be in its own sign and it would be in its own bound and it would be in its own 12th part. I mean it's a
So
strong
he's a happy bunny then, that Mars 1 degree
it,
in
it's a
Scorpio.
it's a hap well, it's happy for Mars in
Hmm.
a scorpionic type way, which I generally try and explain that like Athena rather than like Aries. Wise, able to be calculating, don't mess with because, will be very loyal, faithful, all those things, very skilled, all of that stuff that we would expect that goes with Scorpio, but by goodness, do not cross because,
Mm.
you know,
Yes, don't. Well, that's I mean, because when I wrote the Scorpio book, the title of the book is "How to Win the Trust of a Scorpio." Because originally, because I was asking my newsletter subscribers for suggestions for the titles of the books, and somebody said, "What do you mean how to?" Because I initially titled it "How to Trust a Scorpio." What do you mean trust? It's like how to win our trust. Well, actually, that's the thing. It's not because you can trust a Scorpio. You could trust a Scorpio to do Scorpionic things, like don't even try and trust a Gemini because they can have 64 different versions of something. But a Scorpio, it is all about trust. And you to be able to get them into your world, you definitely do need to win their trust. Trust is a important keyword for them. So I can hear what you're saying about Mars being in the right sign. Sorry, yeah, Mars being in the right sign with the right number is going to make that planet then happier, so to speak. But equally, it's going to be so strongly into that image of it, like they're not going to be shaken from it, so you can't lie to them or do something nasty to them because they'll get back to you. Um, see,
yeah,
I mean,
thick skin.
yeah, see, I do like, don't get me wrong, I do like Hellenistic astrology, but I also absolutely love the outer planets. Uranus was discovered in Bath, where I live, and I've been down to the museum which is now a museum, but it's the house where your man lived. And I've met the local astronomy group, and they've got all the telescopes. I can't afford a telescope, and they'll let me look at Jupiter because it's the only one I can see. I don't think I've ever seen Uranus with it, well, only once, and that was like a massive telescopy thing that they had. But I happen to like the outer planets, and I'm I'm fearful for Hellenistic astrology that they're not using the outer planets, and I don't suppose you do you?
Well, this is the thing you see, at Nightlight Astrology, we
Hmm.
do. Adam
Ah,
calls it oh gosh, what's the title of the I should know this off the top of my head. Ancient astrology for the modern mystic
got
is
ya.
is
Okay.
is what we call it. So we're because Adam was a he learned originally with Rebecca Gordon, and I believe she's a evolutionary astrologer.
Hmm.
So he was using the outers, and so he incorporates that. And there are a lot of Jolly often says we're hybrid astrologers, and I guess that's probably an accurate term, really.
Hmm.
So yes, we do use them, but we certainly don't use them as rulers of any signs or anything along those lines. And I generally look at them, they will work if they're the orbs have got to be like dead on,
Yeah.
really, really, really close. Um, I used an example in my talk the other day of Mars Pluto square when my father-in-law passed. And it was Mars Pluto square in his chart and Mars Pluto square in the sky made an exact grand square,
Hmm.
grand cross, and was absolutely spot on. But those things I think have got to be with an outer planet have got to be spot on. Uh,
Hmm.
so yes, but I'm also aware of they're not the be all and end all of sort of like people's day-to-day discussions. They're things that can certainly come up if you're getting an outer planetary transit like Pluto on your ascendant or Pluto on your a
Moon.
yeah,
Mm.
that's going to be, you're going to notice that. So that is something and I'm saying this as I'm watching Pluto creep towards my ascendant ruler over the next few years. So, I am keeping an eye on these things, but not in the same way as they would be used but with modern astrology.
Mm-mm. And okay, so you've got uh so you do lectures, you do talks and stuff. Who do you do your talks for? Apart from the Astrological Association, of which you are a trustee.
Yes, I did one of those this year. I did one for Rod Chang at AOA
Oh yes,
UK.
his school. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
yes, I did that recently. And I've got one on Adam. I did one for Adam a few years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not one that does lots and lots and lots of talks. I know I talk a lot, but that's because the whole moon in Virgo anxiety gets me going as soon as I start getting speaking. I talk more than I probably want to.
Uh-huh. But I mean, you do talks. I mean, you've done talks, and also because of the Astrological Association conference, you also help do the Zoomy thing. So you're doing all the techie stuff. The people that do the tech stuff, it's tricky. You've got physical people in the room, you've got people online, you've got all wires and tubes, and you've got the speaker, you've got the audience. It's yeah, I think it's fun. I do like a challenge.
Well, yeah, we do run around a little bit like headless chickens, the pair of
Yeah,
us do.
yeah. But I
But
mean, I think it's part of
you've got
it.
more energy than all of us put together, Mary. Honestly, I don't know how you do it. You're in three places at once.
Um, okay, so tell me a little bit more then about so what did you call it? Hold on, let me go back to it. So you doing the hold it, wait, spiritual companions. So tell me more about how you so you're a spiritual coach, companion, and caregiver. So talk to me about what a spiritual coach is.
Well, the idea with that is really speaking to people and just more than anything, just holding sacred space.
Hmm.
People are, as you were saying earlier, there are a lot of people now that do not have what we would class in the UK a religion.
Religion, yeah.
Yeah, and in some ways, as much as I have a strong sometimes dislike for doctrine, where one person is telling a group of people that this is how you do it, and it says so in
Hmm.
this book, so you must do it. That sort of, for me, that kills all sorts of inquiry. If we're not allowed to inquire ourselves, then how are we going to know what works and doesn't for us? So
Mm,
that I totally understand why a lot of people have moved away from that. But I also see that there are so many people now that feel lost without community.
mm,
The community spaces are just disappearing everywhere. Um, and I was looking for something that was going to help me with my astrology practice, as in speaking to people, but on a level of something that I thought was interesting, that I would want someone to talk to me about,
mm.
which really, if you look, I've got the sun in the ninth house, is none of this really is surprising, that I've gone the like spiritual route. I'm not psychic, so it's not spiritual as in the way you do things. I'm not medium.
I'm not a
This is,
medium either. Yeah. I do
oh, right.
psychic readings, but I'm not a medium. I don't contact the other side. Don't do that.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I just do the sixth sensing
Okay.
difference.
Yeah.
You can stay dead. I'm not going to interrupt you. If you're on the other side, great. I'll get somebody else to contact you. That's not my job. I don't do that. Yeah.
Okay, so it's empathic stuff then, I suppose, really, is it that you do?
Look, psychic is tuning into the other person and to yourself to get the feelings behind it, and explaining what psychic is. It's our sixth sense that we all have it. So stuff that you genuinely know deep down is true. Yeah. So your headspace will tell you one thing, but your heart will tell you something else. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, unfortunately, in life, we can't live completely on our psychic self all the time. We wouldn't pay the bills, have a job, have babies, whatever, if we were just operating from our psychic self, it's not practical. I'm a Pisces, last sign of the zodiac. To live in a Pisces world means you'll starve, you won't have any money, and people probably end up hating you. So the important thing on the psychic side of things is to use that ability, but to be able to help people on the physical world. Should I get married? When should I have the job? That type of stuff. Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, I would say that's the same thing. I have Mercury in Cancer, and so it in the eighth house, which even now as a Hellenistic astrologer, I still look at it as a place of crisis. People tend to come to me whether I want them to or not, whether I'm in work mode or not. And this was another thing I needed to learn I needed to learn how to
All
look
boundaries.
after my own boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was finding it very challenging speaking to lots of people and getting, for no fault of their, but, for me not holding my sacred space too. And
Mm.
I think this is something that we all, as astrologers, it's good to know where you are and where the client is and where the
Oh,
bit
yes.
needs to be. There
Hmm.
needs to be a space. Um, and so holding that space and just learning how to be there for people when they need to speak and holding the container and giving them that time is really what that course was all about. And it sounds really simple, but it was actually a really profound experience and something that I will take with me all the way through now for the rest of my life with that. And they're arranging classes for alumni, and so we stay in contact and on all of that as well. Um, but there's something about having that connection with people who aren't going to poo-poo you, because problem I think with society nowadays is we're constantly driven to succeed in a way that government feels that we need to by going and earning money and paying our taxes and and there's a lot of that yeah, we need society to be stable, but there's a lot of that is also driven to what car are you driving, where you're going on holiday, what color are your nails, where did you get your hair done, so there's all of that becomes really draining for us.
Mm.
And you will find that people are constantly seeking something other than. And this is something that came to mind to me yesterday. There's a whole genre of fiction that is all about cozy reading. Like I just read a fantasy novel called Legends and Lattes. It's quite popular at the moment. Lots of people have read it. And the catchline of the book is it's high fantasy with low stakes. So it's just, this an orc running a coffee shop,
Mm.
you know. And I think that in itself just speaks straight away. Somebody looking to create something where people, so that people who don't fit in can fit in.
Mm.
And I think that I was saying to my husband about it yesterday. I said, this is the reason this genre is so popular is because people are looking for a way of connecting.
Yes, but also they're looking to get away from the dismal news that is 24/7, that if you're not careful, you can follow the news 24/7. I mean, you've got Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. You like to be with a group and other comrades, etc., and to have a shared experience of. I mean, Aquarius is the sign of the groups of people. It's not the individual. That's sort of a Libra type of thing, but Aquarius is humanity. And then you've got your Jupiter there, which is about learning. And then you've got a retrograde, you've got to do it your way. So you're not going to want to do the mainstream type of stuff, are you?
No.
No.
No, no, I would say it's not mainstream, but also it's opposite exactly my sun in
Yeah.
Leo.
Mm.
So there's that. But from a Hellenistic point of view, we would be looking at Aquarius as a Saturn ruled sign. There's a
Mm.
big part of me that actually very much likes being on my own.
Mm.
I work very, very well on my own, even though I do also really like the idea of, I like the idea of community.
Mm,
And if community is working well where there are a group of misfits that, that I connect to, then that's great.
mm,
But community on a level, I mean, say for example, we were all hanging out recently, as the AA board, and we're, I would say, a bunch of misfits.
mm,
We're astrologers
mm,
in the world outside of astrology. All of anybody of us could walk into a room and say we're astrologers, and uh, say we go to a pub, and you would speak to everybody in the pub, and most people would go, what's
mm.
that?
What's that? Yeah. Well, they get it confused with astronomer to start with. Yeah. Oh, and then not only that, they sort of think when I tell them an astrologer, they go, "Oh, what am I thinking?" I said, "No, sorry, that's a psychic. I'm not going to tell you what you're thinking anyway, because I wouldn't want to go into your head."
Yeah,
But that's why the AA exists, is to be able to. I was going to use the word educate because that sounds horrible, but to be able to help people understand what astrology is and what it is useful for, and it's a wonderful way of understanding life. I like it because it helps me understand other people. It helped me understand myself. That was the super part of it. It's like, oh, that's why I do that. Oh, that's why I'm like this. That's why I was like this in my family. That was what made loads of sense to me. But then also to be able to use it to help other people, to give them the key points of their chart. If they just remember, don't keep telling people they've got squares. It's not like you do it, but you've got a nice sextile here, you've got a nice triangle. Those are things to build on. Those are the positives in your chart. Those are the things that are going to sort of help you move forwards and stuff. Yes, you could be aware of all that red stuff in your chart, but as Adrian Duncan says, don't have a consultation where you're just telling them the negatives, because how's that going to be of a positive experience for the client? I want my clients to have a positive experience. And I don't mean like positive, ha ha, but I mean to go away from it and to feel fulfilled in some way, or maybe better on their path, or whatever. It's different for everybody. Thank you very much, Saffron, for sharing your thoughts with us today. So we can find you by either Googling Divine Bay Tree and finding you, but your main website is divinebaytree.com. You're also that's your hashtag on Instagram, and you write a lot as well. So we need to tell everybody that they can find you on substack.com/@ Divine Baytree. So there you're writing articles and stuff.
not as many as I should be, but hopefully more next year.
Well, yes, and it's all down to time. There's only so many hours in the day. You're doing plenty of stuff already. And I think it's lovely that you're passionate about what you do. I think that's, if you're not doing something that you're passionate about, you got into astrology from a passion. And I think, if you're self-employed and you're not passionate about your self-employed status, just don't do it, because it's going to be an absolute headache. And you are,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah.
lovely.
I
We love
agree.
it. So thank you very much, Saffron. And I'm going to say goodbye to our listeners. And if they'd like to contact me, it's mary@maryenglish.co.uk. And also I'll put all the links on the show notes to be able to get hold of Saffron today. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great fun.